Alright, this is Yusuf. I don't know if this is going to record because this is all jacked up, but yeah, it's useless saying that. It's up for about this is about Nation Islam and Islam, NOI, and real Islam, whether Sunni or Shia. And it's it's a mistake to consider Sufi like a third class because you're either Sunni or Shia. Sufi, and it's usually Sufi usually is Shia. Shia is like a broad spectrum of considered heterodox. Orthodox Islam is usually considered Sunni. I was up for like 2 days because I was in between job. I didn't have enough time to sleep, and I'd run out to one job and get back, make a video, and then run out, be like, alright, I got an hour and a half to the other one. Everybody knows you get an hour of sleep when you're tired, and you're either not going to wake up in time, or you're going to feel more tired. So Islam was founded by Muhammad ibn Abdullah, 1400 plus years ago in the Arabian Peninsula, stressing monotheism, condemning Christianity, saying that God cannot be man, misunderstanding of the hypostatic union, total misunderstanding of the Trinity, because they got the Trinity from the Coloridians and not the Christians, which is odd. That God who gave, and this is the thing, people say that, well, there's Allah and God. Allah is just God. That's God. So God gave this book to Muhammad, yet he didn't know what the Christians believed, which is a very big stretch, and there's other problems with it, and there's a lot of problems with the morality of, and just the unrighteousness of Muhammad after his conquest of Mecca, and even before, or not conquest, the Hijra, the introduction, him coming to Medina from Mecca and becoming the ruler. But in comparison with Nation of Islam was founded by somebody named W.D. Fard, and it preaches that the black man is the Superman and all this, which is very funny because if you see pictures of W.D. Fard, he's North African, and nobody really knows what he taught, because it was Elijah Poole, later known as Elijah Muhammad, that kind of just basically said what he taught. This is what he taught, and that he was God incarnate, which goes right against Islam's principles. Nations of Islam does not pray as the Sunnis do, or Shia. They don't. If you look at their services, actually they have their main mosque and bakery right over here on the south side of Chicago, and it's nothing like. The men wear these suits and are it's very black, militant, black nationalism, which has nothing to do with Islam either, because none of the founding members of Islam were black. You could say Bilal, but he was a slave, and there were, Arabs, whether you see them as white, whether you see me as white, Arabs are not black people, and there were Europeans that were part of the Sahaba. So Muhammad would be very surprised if only black people were Muslims. And after the death of Elijah Poole, I believe his son disbanded the organization and went to regular Sunni Islam. He says this is whack, this is nutty, because if you read the Quran, it goes against. Nations of Islam, their belief goes right against the Quran, 100% of the way, and it's only interpreted through them, and they twist everything in the Quran. They don't obey the Sunnah, no hadiths. They don't go back to Sahih al-Bukhari, Sahih Muslim, Ibn Kathir, Ibn Dawood, they use none of anything that's looks like anything of Islam. If you look at their services, they're very black Protestant, black American Protestant. It's just like that. You have a speaker up at the podium, and then they don't pray, they don't do wudu, none of that, because Nations of Islam was introduced in around the turn of the last century, and then in the 30s it started growing, in 40s, and then got very big in the 60s. And they would say Muslims or black Muslims, which there weren't very many Muslims here at the time, so nobody knew what Islam really was. Well, certainly not uneducated black people would have no resources to it, so they just, that was it, militant Islam. And I can remember in school, after the Million Man March, getting harassed by black kids, being like, "You're not a Muslim. You can't be Muslim. Muslims are." So when I was in junior high, Muslims have to be black, and all this, and they didn't know what the hell they talk about. They wouldn't eat pork, or it's very odd. It's kind of like what the Mormons do with the Bible. The Mormons are blatant polytheists with these endless gods, and God was not the creator of the universe, and he was once human, and I mean things that are just, a Christian hears them and say, no, it's blasphemous. If any Nations of Islam member were to preach in any way or shape or form what they believed, in a country like Saudi Arabia, they'd be quickly beheaded, or Iran, or basically any Muslim nation state. And if they were to go to Mecca and tell people what they believed, that WD was, no, I'm mixing up, WD Fard, it's a different guy, sorry, was God incarnate, they'd be instantly killed. And sometimes known as Wallace Fard. He had a bunch of names, and he kind of came. He founded it supposedly, and then went out of the picture. And then they found him in. They recently found documents of him that he was living in San Francisco and stuff like this. And today, Nation of Islam preaches weird stuff like an alien mothership in Alaska that's going to rescue all the black people. Islam, for all the faults you can fault it with, is not racist in one way. You could say it's very Arabized and wants to Arabize the whole world, but race has nothing to do with Islam. It has as much to do with Islam as it has to do with Christianity. There's no race that's higher above anybody else, and it's awkward. The Nation of Islam. It's funny, they had this Council of Muslims or whatever on our PBS, which is Channel 11, WTTW Chicago, and they had 3 Muslims, and then they had somebody from Nation of Islam there, and it's like, are you kidding me? They represent nothing like traditional Islam. I can go into the difference between the combined branch, what is usually called Shia, which that's like about at least 7 distinct sects, and Sunni. In Sunni, there's 4 schools of jurisprudence, but nothing in any of them is anything like Nation of Islam. Nation of Islam is just somebody who didn't know anything about Islam, which was Elijah Muhammad, using black nationalism, I even hate that word, basically black supremacy, in a time when America was very segregated. It's a very American religion, very black American religion, and is very, it's somebody who's completely ignorant of Islam, never tried to study it, and just made up stuff as you went along. It's kind of like Joseph Smith. It's like the reverse Joseph Smith. Which kind of sucks for the Muslims. That's why here, I mean, they'll use Muslim phrases like Assalamu alaikum, and which is funny because I just said it like how a Nation of Islam person said it. which is that their Arabic is terrible. They don't know Arabic. It's very strange that you would think a Muslim would be wearing a a tuxedo with a bow tie or whatever it is, and then have straightened hair, because that's what Louis Farrakhan has. And Farrakhan said, I mean, the idea of the white devil is not part of Islam. It's actually very ridiculous to teach that. And that's basically like the basis of Islam is just the hatred of white people, of Nation of Islam. But in Islam, there's nothing like that. And even since Nation of Islam was disbanded, now it's the reconstituted or the reconfederated Nation of Islam. It's not even, but they still preach what Elijah Poole taught, which was Wallace Fard as God incarnate, and you can't say anything more contradictory towards the Quran or Islam than that. Probably the white man is the devil is the second thing, because Muhammad would be very surprised at this. I'll probably go into this deeper in future videos. Peace to you. May God save Serbia. Time to sleep, and I'd run out to one job and get back, make a video, and then run out, be like, alright, I got an hour and a half to the other one. Everybody knows you get an hour of sleep when you're tired, and you're either not going to wake up in time, or you're going to feel more tired. So I know real Islam, whether Sunni or Shia, and it's a mistake to consider Sufi like a third class, because you're either Sunni or Shia. Sufi, and Sufi usually is Shia. So Islam was founded by Muhammad ibn Abdullah, 1400 plus years ago in the Arabian Peninsula, stressing monotheism, condemning Christianity. Alright, this is Yusuf. I don't know if this is going to record, because this is all jacked up, but yeah, it's useless saying that. It's up for about this is about Nation Islam and Islam. She is like a broad spectrum of considered heterodox. Orthodox Islam is usually considered Sunni. I was up for like 2 days because I was in between jobs. I didn't have enough time.